It was a calm afternoon when the air felt soft and the streets carried the quiet rhythm of everyday life. At the small community center near the edge of town, a young woman finished arranging the last set of books on a wooden shelf. She had been working there for years, helping children after school and checking on the seniors who often visited for small conversations or warm meals. The center wasn't fancy, but it had heart. She poured herself into it every single day. She brushed the dust off her hands and looked around the room. The chairs were pushed in, the toys were back in place, and the hall smelled faintly of crayons and hand sanitizer. It was the usual closing hour, and she expected the building to get quiet soon. She gathered her bag, ready to lock the main door, when she heard a soft knock at first. She thought it was one of the kids who had forgotten something. Instead, when she opened the door, she saw a man standing with 2 large bags in his hands. He wasn't dressed like someone coming from the office. His clothes were simple, his posture slightly tired, but his eyes carried a gentle warmth. "I'm sorry, I know it's late," he said in a polite tone, "but someone told me this is where I can drop off these supplies for the kids." She stepped aside and let him in. "You're not too late, just finishing up." He walked in quietly, placing the bags on a nearby table. Inside were color pencils, notebooks, first aid items, and a few boxes of snacks. It was more than a usual donation, and she couldn't help but look at him with surprise. "This is a lot," she said softly. "Thank you. The kids will be really happy." He smiled shyly. "I'm glad. I've been meaning to bring these for a while, but work kept getting in the way." She nodded and began sorting through the items, making sure everything was sealed and safe. As she worked, she noticed he stood quietly near the entrance, as if unsure whether to stay or go. "You can sit down if you want," she offered. "I just need to finish logging these." He hesitated for a moment, and then took a seat at one of the small wooden tables. It was meant for children, making him look slightly awkward, but also strangely endearing. She tried not to smile. For a few minutes, neither spoke. No. She typed on her old computer, the keys clicking loudly in the nearly empty center, watched her work, noticing how focused she was, how she handled everything with care. "Do you work here alone?" he finally asked. She looked up. "This hour, yes. During the day, it's busy, but evenings are usually my quiet time." He nodded thoughtfully, folding his hands on the table. "It's good work you're doing. Not everyone gives so much time to others." She shrugged lightly. "Someone has to, and I like it here. These walls have seen a lot of laughter and stories." There was something simple yet meaningful about her words. He felt it. Maybe it was the way she said it, or maybe it was the gentle sincerity in her voice. After finishing her logging, she walked toward him. "Do you volunteer anywhere?" He shook his head. "I've been wanting to, but I wasn't sure where to start. Life gets busy, you know." "You can help here if you like," she said. "We always need an extra hand. Even small things make a difference." His eyes lifted, a little surprised. "You'd let me help?" "Why not?" she replied. "You already did by bringing these." A soft smile formed on his face. "Then maybe I'll come by again." She nodded, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Nothing romantic, nothing dramatic. Just 2 people who felt an unexplainable sense of ease. Before leaving, he helped her carry the donation boxes into the storage room. Even that small act made the work feel lighter. She noticed how careful he was with everything, not rushing, not complaining, just quietly helping. Once everything was placed neatly, he turned to her. "I'll see you soon then." "See you," she said. He stepped outside, giving a small wave before walking down the street. She watched him go for a few seconds before closing the door. Later that night, as she walked home, she couldn't help but think about the meeting. It wasn't every day that someone brought kindness so naturally. His presence lingered in her thoughts longer than she expected. The next morning, she arrived at the center as usual. Children ran around, teachers talked, volunteers moved between tasks. But even in the rush of the day, her mind drifted back to the quiet man with the gentle smile. By afternoon, she almost convinced herself it was nothing special, just another donor passing by. But when the clock neared the evening hours, she found herself wondering if he would return. Meanwhile, in another part of town, The man stood outside his small apartment, holding a box filled with old storybooks he no longer used. They were clean and bright, perfect for kids. He wasn't sure why he felt nervous about going back. Maybe he didn't want to seem too eager. Or maybe he wondered if she even remembered him. But eventually, he picked up the box, left his apartment, and walked toward the center with steady steps. When he arrived, he saw her sweeping the floor near the entrance. She looked up, surprised but happy. "You came back," she said. "Yeah," he replied, lifting the box slightly. "Brought a few books this time." Her smile grew warmer. "Bring them in. The kids will love them." He followed her inside, and once again, the center felt a little brighter with his presence. As they arranged the books on the shelf, she found the courage to ask, "Where do you get all these things to donate?" He laughed softly. "For my home mostly. I've been cleaning out things I don't use anymore. I thought they'd be better appreciated here." She watched him for a moment. He didn't give the impression of someone with lots of money. His clothes were modest, his shoes slightly worn, but what he brought was thoughtful and useful. It made her wonder what kind of life he lived. "Do you live far?" She asked. "Not really. About a 20-minute walk." "Saves me bus fare," he said with a small laugh. There it was, a glimpse of quiet struggle. Not something he complained about, just a part of his life. Throughout the evening, they moved around the center together. He fixed a broken chair leg. She organized the art supplies. Her conversation slipped in naturally between tasks. She learned that he worked odd jobs, mostly in delivery and repairs. He didn't have a big family in most days. He spent time alone. He learned that she supported her parents and younger siblings with her job at the center. She didn't earn much, but she worked with heart. By the time they finished, the sun was setting. A warm orange glow filled the windows. "You don't have to help this much," she told him. "I wanted to," he replied simply. He walked to the door, ready to leave, but then turned slightly. "I'll come again tomorrow if that's okay." She felt her face warm. "It's more than okay." He left with a light step, and once again. She watched him disappear down the street. Over the next few days, he came back regularly, sometimes with donations, sometimes just to help. Floors, fixed shelves, carried boxes, and even joined the seniors for little games they played. Kids liked him too, especially because he listened to them with genuine interest. The woman found herself enjoying the evenings more than before. She waited for the knock on the door, the soft greeting, the calm presence he brought with him. But what she didn't realize was that he looked forward to those moments even more. He admired her kindness. The way she spoke gently to a child who dropped a toy. The way she guided an elderly person with slow steps. The way she smiled even when she was tired. One evening, as they both finished tidying the center, he glanced at her and said quietly, "You work really hard. You don't get tired?" She shrugged. "Sometimes. But helping people keeps me going." "Still," he said softly, "someone should check on you too." The words surprised her. No one said things like that to her. Everyone was always taking her help, but rarely offering any in return. She didn't know what to say, so she simply smiled. He walked her outside that night. The sky was dark, dotted with soft stars. They didn't talk much on the way, but the silence felt warm. When they reached the main road, he stopped. "You go that way, right?" he asked. She nodded. "And you other side." They stood for a moment, neither ready to leave. Finally, she said, "Thanks for today. And for coming here. It's nice having someone to talk to at the end of the day." His eyes softened. "It's nice for me too." She walked home with a strange flutter in her chest. She didn't call it anything. Didn't want to. But it was there. He walked home with the same quiet feeling, something warm, something gentle, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Days turned into a small routine. Work, center, conversations, smiles. Everything felt natural. Neither of them knew what the future held. They didn't think too far. They just enjoyed the small moments that felt special without needing a name. And though neither admitted it, both felt something. It's quietly growing. Something they couldn't ignore forever. Something that would soon change everything for them both. The days that followed felt different for both of them, though neither admitted it out loud. The woman arrived at the community center each morning with her usual energy. but now there was a quiet spark in her thoughts. She found herself wondering whether he would come that evening, whether she would see that soft smile again. She didn't rush through her tasks, but there was a warmth in her movements now, a gentle happiness that only she could feel. Even the children noticed. One of the kids tugged at her sleeve and asked why she looked extra cheerful. She only laughed and brushed it off, saying she just slept well. But inside, she knew it was because of the man who had slowly walked into her routine without making any noise. On the other side of town, he woke up earlier than usual that week. His mornings felt lighter, his steps less heavy. He moved through his small apartment with a hope he didn't recognize at first. It wasn't because life suddenly became easier. His jobs were still unpredictable, his income still limited, and his days still full of tasks that left his muscles tired. But after each long day, he had something to look forward to, someone to look forward to. That evening, he carried a small bag filled with things he found during his recent cleanup. There were a few board games in good condition and some old craft materials from a time when he thought he might learn drawing. He never did, but he kept the items neatly, waiting for a time he could put them to use. As he walked, he reminded himself not to seem too eager. He didn't want her to think he was pushing himself into her space. He knew how busy she was and how carefully she balanced her life. Still, he couldn't help the way his heart beat a little faster when he neared the community center. When he reached the door, he found it slightly open. The sound of children laughing reached him first. He peeked in and saw her sitting cross-legged with a group of kids, helping them glue colored papers for a school project. She had a little paint on her fingers and a streak on her cheek that she didn't seem to notice. Her smile wasn't big or exaggerated. It was small and real, something that warmed the room without effort. He stood for a moment, watching quietly, unsure whether to interrupt. But one of the kids noticed him and shouted, "He's here." All the children turned and she looked up too. A natural smile spread on her face when she saw him. "You came," she said softly. He nodded. "I brought a few things. Thought they might be useful." Kids crowded around him, trying to peek into the bag he was carrying. He laughed lightly and handed it to the woman. She opened it and looked through the items. "These are great," she said. "The kids will love them." He suddenly felt shy under her warm expression, so he looked down and rubbed the back of his neck. "I just wanted to help." She motioned him inside. "Come on, you can help us finish these crafts." He took off his shoes and sat with them, though the tiny chairs and low tables made him feel a little awkward again. Still, he didn't mind. The kids were excited to show him their work, asking him to help cut some shapes or hold things while they glued pieces together. The woman watched him as he interacted with them, surprised at how naturally he fit into the space. He wasn't loud or overly friendly. He didn't act like someone trying to win attention. He was simply himself, calm and genuine. Sometimes, he would glance at her and their eyes would meet before they both looked away too quickly. Each stolen glance carried something unnamed, something soft. When the last child left for the day, the center grew quiet as it always did. They stood together in the small kitchen area, washing paint cups and brushes. "You're good with them," she said as she rinsed a brush. He shrugged lightly. "Kids are honest. If they don't like you, they show it. If they do, they show that too. Makes things simple." "I've never thought about it that way," she admitted. "You deal with them every day," he said with a soft smile. "You probably don't even realize how natural it is for you." She paused, feeling something shift inside her. Compliments from adults were rare for her. Most people thanked her out of politeness, but his words felt sincere. She placed the brush down and looked at him. "You're kind," she said quietly. He looked startled for a moment. "Me? Yes," she replied. "You don't make noise about it, but you are." He didn't know how to respond. Kind wasn't a word he heard often. Most days he just tried to get through life without burdening anyone. Being called kind felt heavier than he expected, in a good way. Instead of answering, he picked up a cloth and helped dry the cups. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was gentle, almost comforting. When they finished cleaning, she locked the storage room and turned off the lights one by one. He stayed near the entrance, waiting for her as they stepped outside. A cool breeze brushed past them. The streetlights flickered softly, casting long shadows on the ground. "Do you walk home every day?" he asked as they began walking. Most days, she replied. It's not far. He nodded slowly. I can walk with you for a bit if you want. She looked at him, surprised but not uncomfortable. You don't have to. I know, he said, but I want to. Their steps fell into a natural rhythm as they walked side by side. They talked about small things, the weather, the funny things kids said, stories from the center. It wasn't deep conversation, but it felt meaningful. When they reached the intersection, where their paths separated, they stopped. Thank you for today, she said. It was nice having you there. He nodded. Thank you for letting me help. For a moment it seemed like both wanted to say something more, but didn't. Instead, they exchanged a soft smile before parting ways. That night, as she reached home, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was a quiet comfort, like something steady settling into place. He felt the same as he walked back to his apartment. He replayed their conversations in his mind, smiling to himself without realizing it. The next few weeks passed in a soft rhythm. He came to the center almost every evening. Sometimes he helped with repairs, sometimes he helped the kids. And sometimes he simply sat and talked with her as she organized things. Their connection grew in small ways. One evening he noticed she seemed tired. Her eyes were slightly dull, and she moved slower than usual. Long day? He asked. She nodded. A lot of work, and I didn't sleep well last night. He walked to the small kitchen and returned with a glass of water. Here, you need this. She smiled gratefully and took it. Thanks. He hesitated for a moment, then said, You should rest more. You push yourself too hard. She laughed lightly. I have to. People depend on me. Someone should depend on you too, he said softly, almost without thinking. She looked at him, slightly surprised. What do you mean? He paused, searching for words. You take care of everyone, but who takes care of you? The question hung in the air, gentle but heavy. She didn't answer, because the truth was simple. No one really did. He realized he might have said too much, so he sat back, letting the moment pass. But the thought stayed with both of them. Another day he brought dinner, a simple meal he cooked at home. He placed the container on the table. I made extra, he said lightly. Thought maybe you haven't eaten yet? She looked surprised but touched. I haven't, actually. Thank you. They shared the food, talking about little things. It felt almost like a dinner between two people woven into each other's routines. There were moments when she caught him looking at her longer than before, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel seen. There were moments when he felt himself opening up, telling her about parts of his life he didn't talk about with anyone. The connection between them was growing slowly, quietly, naturally. One evening, while they sat together after cleaning up, she said, Do you ever feel like life surprises you when you least expect it? He looked at her for a moment before replying. Sometimes the best things happen that way. They didn't say what they were thinking. They both knew they were speaking about the same thing. As time passed, their bond became something others at the center noticed. The seniors teased her lightly. The kids asked if he was coming every day. Even her coworkers smiled knowingly. But neither of them rushed anything, neither pushed. They simply let the connection grow, and though neither admitted it, both began to realize that this wasn't just friendship. It was something softer, something deeper, something neither expected, yet both needed, something they wouldn't be able to hide forever. The weeks continued to pass. With each passing day, the bond between them grew in quiet ways. Nothing dramatic happened, no big moments or sudden confessions. Instead, it was the little things they shared, simple conversations, small gestures, unspoken warmth that slowly shaped something real between them. Every evening at the community center had become a part of both their lives. The woman grew, used to hearing the familiar knock on the door around the same time each day. The man, even on the days when he felt tired from work or when the weather felt too heavy, still found himself walking toward the center as if something gently pulled him there. One evening, the sky was covered with soft clouds that promised rain. The children had already left with their parents, and the woman sat in the reading corner, sorting through donated books. She had been hoping he would come. but she didn't want to admit even to herself how much she waited for him. When she heard the door open, her heart lifted naturally. She looked up and saw him standing there, slightly wet from the light drizzle that had just started. "You're soaked," she said, standing up quickly. He looked down at his damp shirt and shrugged with a small smile. "Rain caught me halfway. I didn't want to turn back." "Come inside," she said, almost instinctively. "You'll catch a cold." He stepped in, closing the door behind him. His hair had tiny droplets of water clinging to it, and he brushed them away awkwardly. "You should have waited for the rain to pass," she said as she handed him a towel from the supply closet. "I didn't want to be late," he replied gently. She paused at that. It was a simple line, but it carried weight. The fact that he didn't want to be late to see her made something soften inside her. As he dried his hair, she noticed how cold his hands looked. Without thinking, she said, "Sit down. I'll make something warm." "You don't have to," he said. She smiled lightly. "I want to." She boiled some water in the small kitchenette and made him a cup of warm tea. When she handed it to him, he held it gratefully, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. "Thank you," he said. "Of course," she answered. They sat together for a moment, listening to the soft rain outside. The room felt peaceful, and the sound of water hitting the windows added a kind of calmness that made their presence feel closer than usual. "Did you walk all the way here in the rain?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, but it wasn't too bad. Besides, I said I would come today." She looked at him for a second longer than usual, before looking away. "You always keep your word. Not many people do that anymore." He smiled faintly. "I try." After a while, she went back to sorting the books, and he moved beside her to help. They worked quietly, side by side, occasionally exchanging comments about old storybooks or childhood memories. It felt easily like they had known each other much longer than they actually had. As they worked, she noticed him rubbing his wrist slightly, a habit he did whenever he felt tired. She nudged him gently. "You should rest a little," she said. He shook his head. "I'm okay, and I like helping." "Ah." She didn't argue further, but she felt something tighten in her chest. A mixture of concern and affection she didn't know how to name. When they finished organizing the shelves, she sat on the floor with her back against the wall, stretching her legs. He sat down next to her, leaving a respectful distance, but close enough that she could feel his quiet presence. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain. She leaned her head back against the wall and let out a long exhale. "You're tired," he said, noticing the way her shoulders slumped. "Just a long day," she replied softly. "You should take a break sometimes," he said. "You can't carry everything alone." She turned her head slightly to look at him. "Why do you worry about me so much?" He looked down at his hands for a moment, not sure how honest he should be. "Because I care. Maybe more than I should." She felt her heart skip. She opened her mouth to respond, but didn't know what to say. His words weren't loud or dramatic. They were simple, quiet, honest. She swallowed softly. "No one really says things like that to me." "Then they should," he said. "You deserve to be cared for." Her chest tightened again. It wasn't a romantic confession. It wasn't a bold declaration. But it was something. Something meaningful. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping louder against the windows. "It's going to pour harder soon," she said. "Maybe you should wait before going home." "I don't mind," he replied. "I'm not in a hurry." They stayed seated on the floor for a while, talking about simple things: food, childhood memories, funny stories from work. Each story made them laugh softly. Each laugh eased another layer between them. At some point, the conversation grew deeper. "What made you start helping here?" she asked. He hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly. "I think I wanted a place where I felt useful. Somewhere I wasn't just working for money. Somewhere that felt good to come back to." "And does it?" she asked quietly. He looked at her with sincerity. "More than you know." She felt warmth rise in her cheeks. She looked away quickly, unsure how to hold his gaze. "And you?" he asked. "Why do you stay here every day?" "Why this place?" She thought for a moment. "Because it feels like home. Not the walls, not the rooms, just the feeling, and the people. He nodded. You make it feel like that for everyone else too. Her breath caught slightly. His words were simple, but they touched something deep. The rain slowed after a while, leaving only a gentle drizzle outside. The air felt cooler, fresher. They stood up to close the center. He helped her fold the mats and put away the last set of toys. She turned off the lights one by one until only the dim entrance light remained. Before walking out, she reached for her bag and paused. Do you want to walk together? She asked. His eyes lifted quickly. Yeah, I'd like that. They stepped outside, the wet ground reflecting the lights from the street. The rain had softened into a mist, cooling the night air. They walked slowly, not in a rush, their steps falling naturally in sync. She held her umbrella above them both, though it barely covered the space between them. The closeness brought a quiet electricity neither spoke about. He glanced at her gently. You should be careful walking in the rain. Roads get slippery, she smiled. Are you warning me? He laughed softly. Maybe. They continued down the familiar path, and at the same intersection where they always parted ways, they stopped again. She found herself wishing they didn't. Have to stop there tonight? He seemed to feel the same. They stood there, lingering without speaking. The night felt soft, and something unsaid hung in the air. Finally, she said, Thank you for today. You always make the evenings easier. You make them better, he replied. Her breath caught again. She looked down shyly. I should go. Yeah, he said softly. Good night. She walked away slowly, turning once to see if he was still there. He stood in the same place, watching her go with a calm expression. When he finally turned to leave, he felt something shift inside him, something steady but undeniable. He knew he was falling for her. And she, walking home with a warm flutter in her chest, knew she was beginning to feel the same. The days that followed carried a kind of quiet excitement. They still didn't say anything out loud, but their actions changed. His knock on the door began to feel like the highlight of her evenings. Her smile when she saw him became something he looked forward to more than anything. He brought small things, fruit, snacks, a handmade bookmark, a fixed toy for the kids to make her smile. She made sure to keep a cup of warm tea ready as soon as he entered. They grew comfortable in each other's presence in a way that felt natural, almost faded. One evening, the center had a small event planned for the seniors. She was busier than usual, arranging chairs, setting up the snacks, and preparing decorations. He arrived early and helped without being asked. You didn't have to come this early. She said, I wanted to, he replied simply, as the event continued. The seniors laughed, shared stories, and played games. He joined in, helping some of them move comfortably from one activity to another. When she looked at him from across the room, she felt something warm. There was something about the way he treated people with quiet respect and gentle patience. It made him beautiful in a way she hadn't noticed before. After the event ended, they sat together on a bench outside the center, resting their tired legs. The night sky was clear, dotted with stars. You were amazing in there, she said. He shook his head. I didn't do much. You did, she insisted. Everyone loved having you there. He looked at her, meeting her eyes. I'm happy if you're happy. She felt her breath slow. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The world around them quiet. There was a pull between them, soft but undeniable, but neither moved. Neither spoke the words resting on their tongues. Not yet. Instead, they walked home together again, their steps slow, the night peaceful at their usual intersection. He hesitated. He looked at her with a gentle expression. Do you ever feel like maybe our paths met for a reason? Her heart jumped. She swallowed. Yes. He exhaled softly, as if relieved. Me too. It was the closest they had come to acknowledging what was growing between them. They parted ways with a kind of lingering hope neither wanted to end. That night, both of them lay awake longer than usual, thinking of each other, wondering what the future held. They didn't know when the shift would turn into something. Clearer, they didn't know how or when they would say the words they were both holding in their hearts. But they knew one thing. Something real had begun, something that neither time or silence could slow. and it was only the beginning of what was yet to come. The days after their misunderstanding felt heavy for both of them, even though neither dared to say it aloud. The community center felt different too, as if the silence between them had changed the air around the place. People still came and went, children still played in the courtyard. Elders still chatted in the shade, but the quiet space that used to hold their easy conversations was now filled with questions. Neither had the courage to ask. She tried to focus on her work, but small things reminded her of him. A stack of donated books he had helped arrange. The shelf he repaired with careful hands. The little jokes he used to make under his breath when no one else could hear. She missed those moments more than she wanted to admit. He kept his distance, not because he stopped caring, but because he was afraid he had made their bond uncomfortable. He replayed their last conversation again and again, wishing he had expressed himself better, wishing he hadn't let fear guide his words. He had grown used to seeing her smile when he walked into the room, and now the absence of that smile felt like a weight on his chest. Still, life around them didn't stop. The community center had a small event coming up, a gathering meant to thank volunteers and encourage more people to participate. Both of them knew they were expected to attend, and though neither said anything to the other, both hoped secretly that the event might give them a chance to talk again. On the day of the event, she arrived early to help set up. She arranged chairs, placed water bottles on tables, and tried to look busy, even when her hands trembled a little from nerves. She kept thinking about what she would say if she saw him. Should she bring up the misunderstanding first? Should she smile as if nothing happened? Should she wait for him to speak? He arrived a little later, wearing the same simple clothes he always wore. He walked in quietly, unsure if she would even want to see him. But when he spotted her across the room, something inside him softened. She was helping an elderly woman adjust her scarf, gently smiling. And he felt the same warmth he had felt the very first time he saw her. Maybe, he thought, maybe things weren't completely broken. Their eyes met for a moment. Not long, not dramatic, just a brief flicker of connection. But it was enough. It reminded both of them that the bond between them was still there, hidden under the layers of doubt and silence. As the event began, he kept close enough to be near her, but far enough not to disturb her. She noticed it. She noticed everything. And even though she pretended to be focused on the audience, her heart beat faster when she realized he was standing not far behind her. After the speeches ended and people began chatting, she finally saw him alone near the table with the refreshments. Her heart raced. She hesitated, then told herself that she couldn't keep running away from this. So she took a slow breath and walked toward him. He saw her approaching and straightened, unsure how to greet her. Their conversation started with soft, simple words, a small hello, a quiet smile, and then silence. But unlike the silence of the past days, this one was not heavy. It was filled with things waiting to be said. Finally, she gathered the courage to speak. She told him she hadn't been upset with him. She explained that she was simply overwhelmed by everything happening around her and didn't know how to manage her feelings. She admitted that she valued him, maybe more than she should have. And that was why the misunderstanding had hurt her. He listened with deep attention, his eyes soft. Then, in a voice almost as gentle as hers, he confessed his fears. He explained why he had hesitated, why he had stepped back. He told her he had always felt she deserved someone better than him, someone stronger, someone more confident. He thought being close to her would only make things harder for her. Hearing his words made her realize how much he carried on his own shoulders. She stepped a little closer and told him something she had wanted to say for a long time. She told him that she never looked at him the way he looked at himself. To her, he was someone who cared deeply, worked hard, helped others without expecting anything in return, and stood by her when she needed support the most. Her voice shook a little as she told him that. What she valued most was his heart, not his past, not his insecurities, not the things he worried about. He felt his throat tighten at her words. No one had ever spoken about him like that before. There was a long pause between them. This time the silence felt comforting. It was as if everything they had been holding inside was finally out in the open. The noise of the event faded around them. People moved, laughed, chatted, but the two of them stood there in their own small world. Understanding each other more deeply than they ever had, he found the courage to ask if they could start again slowly, carefully, but honestly. She nodded, her eyes warm and a little emotional. She admitted that she had been missing him more than she wanted to admit. He smiled for the first time in days, a real smile that reached his eyes. She felt something inside her relax, like a tight knot had finally loosened. They didn't make any big promises. They didn't define anything too quickly. They simply decided to give their connection another chance. This time without fear, without hesitation. As the event came to an end, they walked out together, not holding hands, not making anything obvious, but walking close enough that their shoulders brushed lightly. It was a small step, but to them it felt huge. Outside, the evening air was cool and soft. Lights flickered along the street. The center behind them buzzed with the last bits of laughter and chatter. She looked up at him, and he glanced at her at the same moment, both smiling shyly at the coincidence. On the way to the gate, they talked about simple things: work, the people at the event, plans for the next day. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional. But the warmth between them had returned. Before they parted ways, she thanked him for listening. He thanked her for giving him an honest chance. They stood there for a long moment, neither wanting to walk away first. When she finally turned to leave, he watched her go with a peaceful feeling he hadn't felt in days. And as she walked home, she felt lighter, as if a weight had lifted from her heart. They both knew this wasn't the end of their challenges. Life would still bring difficulties, misunderstandings, and unexpected moments. But now they also knew something else, something stronger. They knew that their bond was real, that their feelings weren't something imagined or one-sided, that despite their worries, despite their doubts, they cared for each other in a way neither could ignore. And as they both headed home that night, they carried the quiet hope that this new beginning would lead them somewhere beautiful, somewhere peaceful, somewhere worth holding on to. The days that followed their quiet reunion felt different, almost like the world had slowed down just enough for them to breathe again. Nothing between them was dramatic or overly romantic. It was simple, natural. It warmed something to people felt. When they had finally stopped running from what was always there, he began visiting the community center again. Not to impress her, but because he genuinely belonged there. The children welcomed him with laughter. The elders greeted him with warmth. And the staff smiled whenever they saw the two of them standing close, talking softly. As if sharing a small universe only they understood, she found herself looking forward to the moments when he appeared, even if he didn't say anything special. Sometimes he would bring a small snack for the volunteers. Sometimes he fixed a broken chair or helped carry boxes without being asked. And sometimes he simply sat quietly while she worked, his presence alone bringing comfort. There was still a gentle awkwardness between them, the kind that comes right before something beautiful begins. But this time, the awkwardness wasn't painful. It was sweet, almost calming. They were both learning how to trust their steps again. One afternoon, the sky was covered with soft gray clouds. It looked like rain was coming, and most people stayed indoors. The community center was quieter than usual. She was sorting through some donated clothes, thinking she would finish early. When she heard the door open, he stepped inside, slightly wet from the drizzle that had just begun. When he saw her, his face brightened with that soft smile she had grown attached to. She felt her heart warm the way it always did. "You're still here," he said gently. "I thought I should finish this," she replied. Holding up a shirt she was folding, he walked over, rolled his sleeves up, and simply said, "Let me help." They worked side by side, folding clothes, arranging them into neat piles. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping softly on the windows. The sound made the room feel cozier, like they had been placed in a small world away from everything else. After a while, she sat down on a chair, feeling a bit tired. He noticed and handed her a small bottle of water he had kept in his bag. She accepted it with a grateful smile. "You always think about everyone else first," he said quietly. She looked at him, surprised by the softness in his tone. "It's just how I am." "I know," he replied. "It's one of the reasons people feel safe with you." Her heart skipped for a moment. She didn't know what to say, so she looked down, hiding the warmth spreading across her face. After a short silence, he spoke again. "Can I tell you something?" She nodded. "I used to think I shouldn't get close to you," he confessed, his voice low but clear. "I thought I wasn't enough, that I didn't bring anything good into anyone's life." Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. The sadness in his voice tugged at something deep inside her. "But then," he continued, "I realized something these past few days. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about being honest. Being there, trying, even when it's hard." He paused, as if gathering courage for the next words. "I care about you," he said simply. Her breath caught. Not because the words were surprising, but because they finally came from a place of true bravery. She felt her eyes stink not from sadness, but from the gentle weight of the moment. She took a small breath before answering. "I care about you too," he smiled, a slow, relieved smile that softened his whole face. The tension that had lived between them for weeks melted in that instant. They didn't move closer. They didn't touch. They didn't rush anything. They simply sat there, sharing a moment that didn't need anything more. After the rain stopped, they walked together outside. The streets looked fresh, washed by the rain. Small puddles reflected the soft evening light. She walked slightly ahead, and he walked beside her, keeping pace with her steps. When they reached a turn where they usually parted ways, neither of them moved for a moment. The air felt still, as if waiting for something. She finally spoke. "Do you want to walk a little more?" He nodded, and they continued down the road, talking about simple things, childhood memories, small dreams they never voiced before, the quiet fears they had lived with. With every step, something inside them grew stronger, calmer, more certain. Weeks passed, and their connection became a natural part of their lives. They didn't hide it, but they also didn't flaunt it. People at the community center noticed the peaceful change between them. Some teased quietly, some smiled knowingly, and some simply appreciated how supportive they were of each other. He started believing in himself more. He took on new responsibilities, helped organize events, encouraged younger volunteers, and even shared ideas for making the center better. She saw the confidence building inside him, and each time she did, her respect for him deepened. She, in turn, found comfort she had never felt before. He was always there, not overpowering, not demanding, but steady. When she was stressed, he listened. When she was tired, he helped. When she felt discouraged, he reminded her of her strength without making her feel pressured. Their relationship became a gentle, balanced people growing together, supporting each other in small, meaningful ways. One evening, months later, the community center organized another gathering. It wasn't fancy, just a simple celebration for the volunteers. They stood together among the crowd, greeting people, laughing, enjoying the warmth of the moment. At one point, she stepped aside to adjust something on a table, and he watched her quietly. He didn't stare the way someone in love and movies might. Instead, he looked at her with a kind of peace, a kind of gratitude, as if he finally understood how lucky he was to have someone like her in his life. When she returned to him, he spoke softly, "You make everything better." She shook her head gently. "We make everything better," he smiled, and this time he reached out his hand, not boldly, not dramatically, but with a soft, shy confidence. She looked at his hand, then at his eyes, slowly placed her hand in his. It was the first time they held hands in front of others, and yet it felt right. It felt honest. It felt like something they had both been walking toward for a long time. People around noticed, but they didn't stare or whisper. Instead, they smiled warmly. Knowing this moment wasn't about display, it was about two hearts choosing each other. As the evening ended and they walked outside hand in hand, she rested her head lightly against his shoulder. He didn't say anything, but he tightened his hold on her hand just a little, as if promising silently that he wasn't going anywhere. The world around them buzzed softly, cars passing, people chatting in the distance, lights glowing from small shops. But for them, the moment felt timeless. Their journey wasn't built on dramatic twists. It wasn't filled with grand gestures. It was made of small acts of kindness, patient understanding, quiet courage, and two people learning to trust the tenderness growing between them, and in the simple way, their hands stayed linked and their steps moved in rhythm. It became clear that real love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes gently. Sometimes it heals quietly. And sometimes it grows in the spaces where two hearts allow each other to simply be. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. A love story gentle enough to touch the soul, one that didn't need anything, more than two genuine hearts choosing to walk forward. Together, the months that came after their quiet hand-in-hand moment felt like walking into a new chapter neither of them had expected, but both had wished for deep inside. Nothing between them moved too fast, but nothing stayed stuck either. Their bond grew in a way that felt steady, warm, and real, built on the quiet little moments that slowly stitched their lives together. People at the community center noticed how connected they had become. Some teased them gently, some smiled knowingly, and some simply admired the softness in the way they looked at each other. But neither of them cared much about what others said. They were focused on building something honest, something that wouldn't break easily. Every morning, she woke up with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Life still brought stress, family responsibilities, long days at the center, moments of doubt, but knowing he was there changed how she faced each day. He didn't solve all her problems. He didn't promise the impossible. He just stood beside her in a way that made everything feel a little lighter. He, on the other hand, began to feel more confident than he ever had before. He took on more tasks at the center, treated people with the same quiet kindness, and slowly allowed himself to believe he deserved good things too. Being around her taught him that love wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, patience, and trust. One morning, the community center planned a small workshop for new volunteers. She was in charge of organizing it, and she worked hard for days preparing everything: posters, materials, schedules, and snacks. On the day of the workshop, she felt a little overwhelmed, but he stayed by her side the whole time, helping wherever he could. When the volunteers gathered, she stepped forward to speak. As she talked, he watched her with quiet admiration. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She didn't try to impress anyone. She just spoke with sincerity, explaining the purpose of the center, the needs of the community, and the importance of kindness. After the workshop ended, someone approached her and said, "You speak from the heart. People listen because you care." She blushed a little, unused to such compliments. But when she turned to him and saw the pride in his eyes, something inside her warmed deeply. Later, as they cleaned up the room, he said softly, "You're incredible, you know." She shook her head. "I just did what I had to do." "No," he replied. "You did more than that. You make people feel seen." His words lingered with her the whole day. The next few weeks were busy. The center held different events, and they spent long hours working together. Sometimes they shared meals, sometimes long conversations, and sometimes quiet moments where no words were needed. Each day added another layer to their connection. One evening, after a long day, they sat outside the center on a low wall. The sky above them was painted with soft colors: orange, pink, and fading blue. The air was cool, and the street around them was peaceful. She sighed and leaned back slightly. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough." He looked at her carefully. "Why would you think that?" "Because there's always more to do," she said. "More people to help, more problems to solve." "That's true," he agreed gently. "But you're doing what you can, and that's enough. More than enough." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words sink in. When she opened them again, she found him watching her with quiet concern. "Do you ever feel tired?" she asked. "All the time," he said with a small smile. "But then I remind myself why I'm doing all this." "And why is that?" she asked. He looked at her, his expression soft and steady. "Because there are people worth supporting. People worth standing with. People who make this place feel like home." She felt her breath catch slightly. He didn't say her name, didn't make it dramatic, but the meaning was clear. Her heart filled with warmth. As days passed, life continued with its ups and downs. She had moments where stress pulled her down, and he had moments where old insecurities surfaced. But the difference now was that they faced those moments together. When she needed to talk, he really listened. When he needed reassurance, she was there with steady patience. They didn't try to fix each other. They just supported each other. One afternoon, the center received a message that a family nearby needed urgent help clothes, food, and emotional support. Without hesitation, the two of them gathered supplies and went together. The family was struggling. The house was small, the parents tired, the children quiet. She sat with the mother, listening to her worries. He helped the father carry boxes inside. They stayed long enough to make sure the family had everything they needed for the moment. On the way back, she felt emotional. Helping others always made her grateful. Sometimes it also made her heart ache. He noticed her quietness and asked softly, "You okay?" She nodded, but her eyes glistened. "I just wish I could do more." "You did more than most people would," he said. "And you didn't do it alone." Realizing how deeply connected they had become, how their lives had started to blend, not through grand gestures, but through shared compassion. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings, he walked her home. They moved slowly, not in a hurry. When they reached her door, she paused. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked. "For being here. For everything." He looked down for a moment, shy but happy. "I'm not good with big promises," he said. "I don't come from a perfect background. I don't have much to offer. But I'll always try. I'll always show up." She stepped closer, her voice gentle. "You already give more than you know." They stood quietly, the night air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Their connection wasn't the type that burst into flames. It was the kind that glowed steadily, warming everything it touched. Months later, their bond had grown into something even deeper, something peaceful, something that felt like home. The community center thrived with their help. People admired their partnership not because they flaunted it, but because they uplifted everyone around them in one quiet evening. As they sat together on the same low wall where they had talked months ago, he took a slow breath. "There's something I want to say," he murmured. She turned to him, her eyes soft and ready. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but I know one thing. My life is better with you in it, and I want to keep walking with you wherever life takes us." Her heart beat faster, but not with fear. With certainty, with warmth, with love. She nodded slowly, her voice shaky but sure. "I want that too."